No other apologies. I see no other apologies. And therefore, any declarations of interest on the matters that we will be presenting today? Nobody's indicated, as you are required if you become aware that you have an interest, you can declare it at that time as well. So I'll then move on to item 2, and that is minutes of the meeting on the 19th of January. Are they an accurate record of our meeting, please? Can I have any agreements? Show of hands, please. Either physical hands or the electronic hand will do me. I have seen that there is a majority of hands in favour, therefore they are correct. There are no item 3, there are questions from the public. There are no questions from the public, and therefore I'm about to, when I can clear all this little things that are on my handheld computer, I'm going to read out the statement that I've been given by Democratic Services. And this is in connection with just rescheduling the annual general meeting and the cabinet meeting that follows in the new year because of, well, it became apparent to you anyway. The county returning officer has decreed that the count of the elections need not take place overnight on election night, which means that it will be difficult to make the necessary arrangements to take place to issue summons to all members for the annual meeting on Monday the 10th of May, which would be necessary for the meeting to take place on Tuesday the 18th of May. Accordingly, it is proposed to move the date of the annual meeting. We do not know whether or not it will be lawful to meet remotely, and we have not determined a suitable physical venue. Since it is social distancing requirements are still in place in May, we will not be able to accommodate all members in the council chamber. So therefore, it is recommended that the annual meeting of the council for the 21-22 municipal year be held at 10 a.m. on Tuesday, 25th of May. This is currently the date for the May cabinet meeting. Therefore, I am proposing that we move the meeting of the cabinet scheduled on Tuesday, the 25th of May till 10 a.m. on Tuesday, the 8th of June. We will leave the current date of Tuesday, the 22nd of June in the diary, as we may need it for a finance report, which has a statutory deadline. I hope that is clear, but if it is not clear, certainly you may ask questions to me, which I will direct to Paul Turner, the monitoring officer, or indeed the county returning officer, who's Gavin Jones as well. So are there any questions? So I have made that proposal to you, certainly in terms of the cabinet meeting, we can vote on that. The council meeting is a notification that there will be a requirement to move that council meeting. But I think if we take the view that we're voting on the cabinet meeting date being changed, can I therefore see a show of hands for those who approve the date of the council meeting being, the cabinet meeting being changed? Can I have any abstentions or any opposition to that? I'm scanning the screen because there's quite a few people in today. I see no opposition to that. So let the minutes record that this cabinet has agreed to the change as specified by Democratic Services. So thank you for that. So I'm going to move us on now to the next item, which is item 4 of the agenda, which is temporary resourcing services. This will be Cabinet Member Susan Barker. I will open it up to questions first. Can I just ask and remind everybody that the paper you have before, your questions should be directed deliberately to the content of the paper. You should not stray into any other extraneous areas of conversation, points of view. You should have factual questions that you wish to have answered. So are there any questions for Susan Barker on the paper that is on item 4? I have one indication so far, which is Councillor Chris Pond. So Chris, I have you, I see, and I have Ivan Henderson. I see no other indication, so I'm going to take, first of all, Chris Pond, please, your question.
Leader, will you accept that I agree with this recommendation? I think it's eminently sensible. I think the way that it has been suggested to be organised will work, and it builds, I think, on long-standing practice. For instance, in some parts of the county council service, notably the libraries, where a reserve list of staff has long been maintained who can be called on very quickly at no expense to the council and no commission to any third party.
Okay, thank you for that then, Chris. And now I'm going to move, I think that was a compliment, Susan, so I think you need to necessarily respond other than in your own time and in your own words. Perhaps thank Chris Bob for his comments. Ivan, your questions, please.
Thank you, Leader. And I too associate myself with those comments that the more servers we bring back in-house, the better as far as my group's concerned. Leader, on 3.5, page 22, says that ECC have, on average, 550 temporary workers engaged at any one time. The question is, one of the questions is, are temporary workers paid in line with the recognised pay rates for the positional vacancy they are covering? My second one is 3.7, page 23. This service come back in-house. Mentions the benefits of establishing better routes to secure the right talent at the right time. And on page 1.5.1.9, page 30, it says about by year 4, it's estimated that the annual savings across the organisation will be 259,000. And on 3.1, page 22, the temporary worker recruitment services has been delivered by an external service provider for in excess of 10 years. My question is, Leader, if this in-house brings us all these benefits and these savings, why hasn't it been done before?
Susan, you may wish to answer those questions from Councillor Henderson, and you know it's your right to give a written reply if you so choose.
Thank you, Leader. Councillor Henderson, I will give you a written reply to all those questions and copy those to other members as well. I'm very pleased that this is coming back in-house. You remember that back in 2019, we brought permanent recruitment back in-house. This is building on that paper. There was, I think, Councillor Henderson, in the past, an awful lot of outsourcing in local government and things come around, and bringing this in-house, I think, is very appropriate. So what this paper does, it outlines the proposed approach to the attraction and management of our temporary workforce when the current arrangement comes to an end in 2021. We're proposing that we take back greater control of temporary recruitment, including a focus on the direct hire of temporary staff, continuing our efforts to lessen the use of third-party recruitment agents. We will have direct control of how we advertise and attract for temporary staff and enhance our employer brand. The direct management of an agency supply chain to ensure we can engage third-party recruitment agency to meet the needs of harder to fill areas such as social service and senior hires. Chairman, the recommendations there on 2.1 to 2.4, I thank Councillor Pond for his kind words, that he thinks this is the right way forward, and I'd like to move the recommendations.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Barker. I have a question, I think, from Councillor Spence, though. Councillor Spence?
Oh, thank you, Leader. I just wanted to offer a supplementary, while we're in the public domain, to Councillor Henderson's first question. So, as a large number of these staff are working in the social care domain, many of these agency staff, typically agency staff cost us more than our staff, so they ought to be getting at least the same rate of pay and possibly more because of that agency status, though clearly some of it will go to their employer. I would be very keen, actually, Leader, to reduce the number of people we have on such arrangements as well, to bring more into our permanent employment. And that is the subject of a separate initiative currently underway.
I think, Chairman, if I may, that if we bring and recruit these people ourselves, it's more likely that we'll be able to convert them to permanent employees within Essex County Council. That's certainly what we'd like to do.
Okay, so to answer your question about why haven't we done it before, Councillor Henderson, this council and this administration constantly reviews and refines its approaches to any number of different topics, and it's felt is appropriate that we refine and review this particular process. And that's the reason for this change that we've made here today. So the recommendations that have been put before you by Councillor Barker have been points under recommendations 2.1 to 2.4. Are they approved? They are approved. Thank you very much indeed. I know, Councillor Barker, that you need to leave to go to another session, so thank you for your time. I hope it hasn't taken up too much of your time, but it's always a pleasure to hear you speak on this topic so well. Thank you. So I now move on to item 5 then, which is the approval to place the 2021-22 contractual task orders with Ringway Jacobs for the value of £2 million and over. This is the paper that will be addressed by Councillor Kevin Bentley, the Deputy Leader and Cabinet Member for Infrastructure. But before I ask Councillor Bentley to talk to the paper, are there any questions, please? Councillor Henderson, your questions, please.
Thank you, Leader. On page 40, 3.4, it explains the task orders are issued under a number of headings, and one of those being planned maintenance such as resurfacing. One of my questions is, can the portfolio holder assure me that this council is not paying for maintenance that has failed by either potholes or resurfacing? My next question is, how much of the funding for road maintenance, which is provided to the main contractor, Ringway Jacobs, is handed over to subcontractors? Can you provide a list of those subcontractors used by Ringway Jacobs? Are any of those companies used closely associated to Ringway Jacobs, i.e. are they a subsidiary?
Okay, thank you, Councillor Henderson. I see no other member of the opposition indicating they have questions. So, Councillor Bentley, it's to you to address those questions as you choose. You can give a written reply, and it's also for you to address the paper itself and to speak to it and move the recommendations as well. So, Councillor Bentley.
Peter, thank you very much indeed. On the second point, it's quite a detailed question, so I will need to give a written reply. We certainly use subcontractors that are as local as we possibly can to Essex, people keeping money into Essex where possibly we can. Whether there's a relationship with Ringway Jacobs, well, we'll go through the list and I'll provide that to you, but I hope there's no inference there's anything wrong if they were. On the first one I can answer, if any failure happens, normally it's down to the weather, but if any failure happens, then, and it's not part of the work, it shouldn't have taken place, then that work is done not at the taxpayer's expense. I can't give a blanket assurance because it depends on the individual case, but the ones I've dealt with recently, they have been re-repaired, but not at the taxpayer's expense. That answers both of those questions, and I'll make sure it's circulated to everyone, Leader, if you so desire. On to the paper itself. Well, it's a technical paper, but a very important paper. Although we set the budget within the service, we have to issue these task orders for the work to be done. And the value of those, of course, is over the limit where I can do that. So that's why the paper comes here. It's a regular feature. You'd have seen it before. And we have to, of course, plan the work in advance. We don't just go out and do it the next day. We have to make sure these works plan, crews are in place. And of course, I will reiterate, these crews have been working through COVID under special restrictions, make sure they're social distancing. They have done a first-class job. I never fail to spend my time thanking those teams out there who've worked right throughout the pandemic. I have dealt with flooding, lots of water falling out of the sky, lots and lots of water falling out of the sky. So dealing with that flooding, then snow, then the ice, and then repairing. And these are the same crews, of course, that grit our road. So I think we hold a huge debt of gratitude to them. And certainly I never waste a moment to praise them because I think they've done and continue to do a sterling job. So this paper is technical but important. There are two recommendations, 2.1 and 2.2. You'll notice in 2.2, Leader, it refers to you as well as myself if we need to make any changes. And that's because a large part of this is the HIF bid in the capital programme. And as you know, HIF comes under you because of the Garden Community Project. So that's why you're mentioned in this paper as well. But with that, and if there are any other questions, I put forward the recommendations 2.1 and 2.2.
And thank you, Councillor Bentley, for that very succinct appraisal of the situation there. I know that Councillor Louise McKinley is having some technical problems and has had to turn the video off. So I will, when it comes to the vote, which I'm going to ask, are those recommendations approved? And Councillor McKinley, can you indicate as well through speaking that you approve? You're muted. Oh, your hand's up. Okay, thank you, Louise. That's right. So that paper is approved. So thank you very much indeed for that, everybody. There's no disagreement with the paper? None. All right, so thank you. We now move on to the item 6, the establishment of a new 210 place primary school and 56 place early years provision at the St Luke's Housing Development, Runwell. Could I have questions, please, if there are any from leaders of the opposition, or Councillor Pond?
Yes, thank you very much, Leader. I didn't want to comment on education provision in Runwell, but I did want to inquire about how the design of the new school will be authorised. Essex has a long and honourable tradition in good design for schools. It goes back to the Second World War and even before that. And with the advent of the government's new Build Beautiful initiative, how will that be factored into the design, and who will actually do the design?
So thank you. Are there any other questions for Councillor Ray Gooding? I see none. So Councillor Gooding, would you like to answer the questions? You know you can give a written reply if you wish, but also then talk to the paper and move the recommendations, please.
Well, thank you, Leader, and thank you for the opportunity to present this. I think this, as the consultation details show, is fairly popular in the area. It's a much needed school to meet the needs of a new development and a growing population. So from that point of view, I think that both the preschool and the school itself that are planned on the site are much needed. I think to move on to Councillor Pond's question, inevitably beauty is in the eye of the beholder, and whether a building looks nice or whether we appreciate it is often a subjective issue. But the one thing I would say is that this design and this opportunity to build new schools in this way gives us really a very good opportunity to do things better than we have in the past. You'll note that within the paper there's quite a lot of details set out about travel plans and how we're going to accommodate that to make sure that the school meets the needs of the very local community rather than the broader remit. What we really don't want to do is have people driving in from a distance to go to this school, because that obviously has a significant impact on the environment. But also in terms of that building beauty, we've got a really good opportunity to make this as the continuation of our process towards net zero buildings, particularly school buildings that we're looking at. One of the things that I'm quite keen to do is make sure that the building is also, from the design, I'm not sure whether the word's COVID friendly or unfriendly. We want to make sure that the services within it deal with making sure that the building is safe from that point of view. And I think there's some new thinking coming out of that. So in terms of the design process, yes, this would be usually in the usual way of design and build, but I think we've got a much stronger hold over the contractors and the design teams that we use with much earlier intervention. What we don't want is for that design process to slip into a contractor's need to design the building from other points of view. So really strong management of that design process, that'll be carried out in-house by our own infrastructure delivery team. So I think there's a good opportunity to achieve all of these things that we want from the school. So from that point of view, I think this is a really good process, much needed in the area. So I would recommend items 2.1 through to 2.4 and ask for an agreement on those points.
Thank you, Councillor Gooding. Members, you have heard the recommendation 2.1 to 2.4 be approved. Could you signal your approval, please? I will put my hand up as well, and I note that Councillor Louise McKinley has indicated as well. So that's agreed. Thank you very much indeed for that, Councillor Gooding. I now move on to Councillor Tony Ball and the land at Amberts Farm. And this one I will open to questions first of all. So can I have any questions, please? I see nobody indicating. So Councillor Ball, I think if there are no questions, is there anything you wish to say very briefly and then move the recommendations, please?
Thank you. I think all the details I'd like to add are in the recommendations. So, with your permission, I shall move recommendations 2.1 and 2.2.
And the recommendations by Councillor Ball have been moved, and are they agreed? So I've agreed. Councillor McKinley is also signalled as well. So thank you very much indeed. So that's agreed as well. So we now move on to the 8th item, which is integrated waste handling service delivery options. And this one again, I will open it up to questions from the opposition. I have Councillor Henderson, and I do not see any other oh, I do see Councillor Pond as well. All right, so I've got Councillor Henderson and Councillor Pond. So Councillor Henderson first, please.
Thank you, Leader. My first question is, has discussions started with those relevant trade unions regarding this this transfer in-house with those members of staff with their conditions of service? And on point 6.13, it says Essex County Council is required to take on eligible employees on their existing terms and conditions. However, changes to the workforce can be made when there is an economic organisational reason. So can you assure me that you will not use this option to reduce terms and conditions of employees on the transfer to this council?
And that's your question, so thank you. And Councillor Pond.
Well, Leader, I rather to the converse of what Ivan said, it appears that the TUPE transfers into the county staff and into the county pension scheme, speaking as an old trade unionist, will be an improvement in terms and conditions. And in the recognition that there's more joy in heaven over one repented sinner than a number of righteous men and women, I think we have to applaud what is suggested in the paper. Perhaps the Cabinet member might just take me through why certain things are being reserved after this reverse privatisation has been done, including the sale and merchandising of recyclers, because it strikes me that is an area where the county could lead by determining not just the cash flow, but the ultimate destination of recyclers, particularly avoiding problematic export systems. Thank you.
Okay, so Councillor Simon Walsh.
Okay, thank you very much, Chairman. If I deal with Councillor Henderson's two questions, I can assure him that conversations are already underway with the trade unions and will continue as this moves forward. The point under 6.3, well, really TUPE will apply those regulations, so I think that's sufficient assurance for him. Councillor Pond, thank you for your comments. The point about having some reserved matters is that the waste world is a fast moving beast, and that the recycling market is changing ever more as we move forward, and we need to be swift of foot to actually keep on top of it. So that's really why. And of course we have the Environment Bill moving through government at the moment, and there may be coming from that further legal positions regarding how we manage domestic waste moving forward. So that really is why we need to be holding these things back. So yeah, that is really the case. And as things move forward, we will be issuing new contracts for these materials to ensure we get best value from those sites. If I may move to the paper, Chairman, the first thing I want to say is there's a minor amendment to the recommendations. and that's under 2.2. And under the third line, it reads the additional resources and structure changes required to deliver. If we can remove and structure changes so that 2.2 then reads to delegate to the Cabinet Member for Environment and Climate Change Action in consultation with the Cabinet Member for Finance, the approval of the additional resources required to deliver the in-house delivery model. So if we can note that, the paper itself is a revisit to the earlier paper. We did need to do some more work to analyse whether bringing it fully in-house or to look at a local authority trading company was the best option. The analysis has come back with a recommendation to go in-house, and that really is the purpose of this paper for Cabinet to agree. So the two recommendations sit under 2.1 and as amended 2.2. Thank you, Chairman.
Let me just go back. Thank you, Councillor Walsh. Let me just go back and restate the point you made about recommendation 2.2. And again, to delegate to the Cabinet Member for Environment and Climate Change Action in consultation with the Cabinet Member for Finance, the approval of the additional resources required to deliver the in-house delivery model. So with that amendment clearly stated, the recommendations 2.1 to 2.2, are they approved? I would signal that they are approved. So thank you. Everybody has approved the paper. Thank you again. So I now move on to item 9, which is the decisions taken by or in consultation with Cabinet members. Are there any questions arising? I see no hands indicating, therefore we will move on to item 10, the date of the next meeting. To note that the date of the next meeting of the Cabinet will take place online at 10 AM on Tuesday, the 16th of March 2021. Item 11 is urgent business. I have had no notification or request for any urgent business under this particular item or under this particular agenda, which is the open agenda, and therefore there won't be any in that case. And then I move to the next item, which is, because they're exempt items, I need to read out the following statement. The following items of business have not been published on the grounds that they involve the likely disclosure of exempt information falling within Part 1 of Schedule 12A of the Local Government Act 1972. Members are asked to consider whether or not the press and public should be excluded during the consideration of these items. If so, it would be necessary for the meeting to pass a formal resolution, and that formal resolution is that the press and public are excluded from the meeting during the consideration of the remaining items of business on the grounds that they, on the grounds that they involve the likely disclosure of exempt information falling within Schedule 12A to the Local Government Act 1972, the specific paragraph or paragraphs of Schedule 12A engaged being set out in the report or appendix relating to that item of business. So can I be clear that we're now, that's been moved by me, therefore I need it to be seconded. I see a hand from Councillor